Some careers are measured in moments, others are measured in time. Larry Fitzgerald belongs to the second category. His greatness didn't arrive loudly or demand immediate recognition. It unfolded gradually, across seasons that rewarded patience rather than urgency. In a league obsessed with peaks, Fitzgerald built permanence. While eras changed and attention shifted, his presence stayed constant, forcing time itself to become the evaluator. This isn't a story about what flashed brightest, it's about what endured. To understand Larry Fitzgerald, you don't ask when he was at his best. You ask how long excellence remained undeniable. Larry Fitzgerald's greatness never announced itself in sudden bursts. It accumulated. From the moment he entered the league in 2004, his career moved with deliberation and patience. There was no rush to dominate headlines, no urgency to manufacture moments. Instead, Fitzgerald built something sturdier, seasons that stacked reliability year after year. While others chased flashes that spiked attention and faded just as quickly, he invested in consistency. His production didn't rely on perfect conditions or ideal timing. It arrived steadily, regardless of quarterback, scheme, or circumstance. Time didn't dilute his impact, it sharpened it. Each season added clarity, not distance, reinforcing what had already been established. As the league evolved around him, his relevance didn't disappear, it settled. What once felt routine slowly revealed itself as rare. The longer he played, the harder it became to ignore how dependable excellence can reshape expectations. Fitzgerald's legacy wasn't something that demanded immediate recognition. It revealed itself gradually, through absence of decline rather than presence of spectacle. You didn't notice it all at once. You realized it later, after it never went away, after consistency outlasted eras, and after reliability proved more enduring than any single moment ever could. 17 seasons in the NFL don't just test the body, they test relevance. Larry Fitzgerald played through multiple offensive eras, rule changes that reshaped the passing game, and repeated roster resets that erased continuity. What made his longevity meaningful wasn't simply that he lasted, it was that he remained useful. Fitzgerald was never hanging on to a past version of himself. As the league evolved, so did his role. When speed and explosiveness defined the position, he adapted. When spacing, precision, and awareness became paramount, he excelled there too. Time didn't shrink his impact, it redirected it. That distinction mattered. Many players survive late into careers by becoming peripheral. Fitzgerald remained central. He contributed with intention, not nostalgia. His presence still shaped game plans, stabilized offenses, and justified snaps. That endurance forced evaluators to rethink how greatness should be measured, not by peaks alone, but by relevance sustained across eras. Fitzgerald's career challenged the idea that dominance must be brief to be meaningful. Instead, it showed that excellence, when adaptable and disciplined, can stretch far beyond expectations, not fading with time, but evolving alongside it. Arizona didn't simply employ Larry Fitzgerald, it revolved around him. Coaching staffs changed, quarterbacks rotated, and expectations reset year after year. Yet Fitzgerald remained the constant. In a franchise often searching for continuity, his presence provided it. That stability mattered most during periods when identity felt fragile. Without him, many seasons might have drifted into anonymity, absorbed by rebuilding cycles and lost momentum. With him, the Cardinals always had a center of gravity, something reliable to organize around, both on the field and in the locker room. Fitzgerald's responsibility extended beyond production. He carried symbolic weight. His preparation, consistency, and restraint became the reference point for professionalism within the organization. Players measured themselves against his standard. Coaches trusted him to reinforce culture without needing instruction. He wasn't just the most accomplished player in franchise history, he was its anchor. When everything else shifted, Fitzgerald held position, and in doing so, he gave Arizona something rare in professional sports: continuity that endured long enough to become identity. Most wide receivers encounter a sharp decline. Larry Fitzgerald experienced a transition instead. As explosiveness gradually faded, awareness expanded. He didn't attempt to outrun age or pretend time wasn't advancing. He chose to understand the game more deeply than the defenders trying to stop him. Fitzgerald compensated with intelligence, mastering spacing, leverage, and timing in ways that neutralized physical loss. His feel for coverage grew sharper as athletic margins narrowed. Where others relied on speed, he relied on anticipation. Where others faded, he recalibrated. That intellectual mastery extended his effectiveness long past the point most receivers disappear. It forced the league to confront a broader truth: decline isn't inevitable, resistance to adaptation is. Fitzgerald never resisted. He evolved continuously, adjusting his role, his roots, and his impact as circumstances changed. In doing so, he made time a collaborator rather than an opponent. Instead of eroding his value, years added layers to it. His career became a case study in how longevity is built, not through denial of change, but through respect for it. Super Bowl XLIII remains frozen in football memory because Larry Fitzgerald's performance still feels present. It hasn't aged into nostalgia, it continues to feel relevant. His dominance that night didn't rely on scheme advantages or favorable matchups. It was built on precision under the heaviest possible pressure. Every route was exact. Every catch carried consequence. That game permanently preserved his peak, even without a championship ring attached to it. Time didn't overwrite what he did. It replayed it. Years later, the performance still stands intact, untouched by changing styles or evolving offenses. It exists outside context, effective in any era. What makes that night endure is not just the production, but the clarity of it. There was no ambiguity about his control of the moment. Fitzgerald didn't borrow greatness from circumstance, he created it through execution. That's why every postseason conversation about clutch wide receivers eventually circles back to that performance. Not because of what followed, but because of what was undeniable in real time. Super Bowl XLIII didn't close his story, it crystallized it. A reminder that some peaks don't fade with outcomes, and some performances become permanent reference points, regardless of how the final score is remembered. Being second all-time in receptions and receiving yards isn't merely a measure of volume, it's evidence of survival through relevance. Larry Fitzgerald didn't compile his numbers in stable environments or during prolonged stretches of dominance. He produced through instability, through changing systems, rotating quarterbacks, coaching turnover, and constant uncertainty. That context matters. His statistics don't represent advantage, they represent endurance. They chart a career that refused to erode even when circumstances rarely cooperated. Fitzgerald didn't benefit from continuity, he endured without it. While others faded as structure disappeared, he remained productive by adapting to whatever replaced it. Those numbers document more than accumulation. They record usefulness sustained across eras. They show a player who stayed relevant not because conditions were ideal, but because his approach was resilient. Each catch added proof that decline isn't inevitable when preparation evolves alongside the game. Fitzgerald's place near the top of the record books isn't about opportunity exploited, it's about assumptions outlasted. His career statistics stand as a ledger of consistency under pressure, longevity through transition, and excellence maintained long after the league expected erosion. Larry Fitzgerald's restraint aged as well as his production. He avoided controversy, demanded no exits, and never tried to publicly negotiate his own legacy. There were no press tours to reframe perception, no late career pivots designed to chase validation. He trusted time to do the work. That silence mattered. It prevented erosion. While other careers were constantly relitigated through context, controversy, or revision, Fitzgerald's remained intact. He wasn't pulled into era-based arguments or generational disputes because his consistency existed outside of them. He didn't need comparison to remain relevant. As years passed, that restraint separated him rather than diminished him. While others were re-evaluated, re-explained, or recontextualized, Fitzgerald stayed steady. His reputation didn't require defense because it wasn't built on moments that needed justification. Time became his advocate. Distance strengthened rather than softened his standing. In a league where narratives often fray, Fitzgerald's held firm, not because it was protected, but because it was never overextended. His legacy endured the way his career did, quietly, patiently, and without the need for correction. When Larry Fitzgerald stepped away, it didn't register as loss. It felt like closure. There was no comeback pursuit, no late career reinvention, no attempt to chase relevance one more time. His exit mirrored the way he played the game, composed, deliberate, and unforced. He left without negotiating sentiment or stretching the story past its natural end. That restraint mattered. By choosing finality over prolongation, Fitzgerald preserved the integrity of his career. Nothing felt diluted. Nothing felt unfinished. His legacy wasn't extended for nostalgia's sake. It was sealed by intention. The absence of excess gave his ending weight. In a league where careers often fade through repetition, his concluded with clarity. He understood something instinctively that few athletes do. Time respects restraint. Knowing when to stop can be as important as knowing how to perform. Fitzgerald didn't exit football chasing applause. He exited having earned it already. His career didn't need a final chapter written in desperation. It ended the same way it was lived, complete, dignified, and untouched by regret. And because of that, his story didn't diminish after the final snap. It settled, intact, into history. Wide receivers entering the league don't measure themselves only against highlights, they study careers. In that space, Larry Fitzgerald became a benchmark, not for style, but for sustainability. His name surfaces in conversations about professionalism, preparation, and trust more often than flash or flair. Young players hear about how he practiced, how he prepared, how rarely he wasted motion or opportunity. Coaches reference him when explaining what reliability looks like over time. Veterans point to him when discussing standards that don't fade with age or circumstance. His influence doesn't arrive loudly, it travels quietly. That kind of impact moves through locker rooms long after the final snap. It shapes expectations subtly, informing how players think about longevity, discipline, and responsibility. Fitzgerald's career became a template rather than a trend. This is how legacy survives time. Not through constant visibility, but through repetition of example. His name doesn't demand attention, it carries weight. And as long as players enter the league searching for careers that endure rather than moments that spike, Larry Fitzgerald's standard will remain present, steady, relevant, and respected. In the end, Larry Fitzgerald's career delivers a simple but difficult truth: time is the most honest evaluator the sport has. It removes trends, noise, and temporary narratives until only substance remains. When that process finished, what endured was reliability, sustained excellence, and dignity. The absence of a championship never diminished him. If anything, time reframed it. As seasons passed and comparisons shifted, Fitzgerald's consistency grew more impressive, not less. His work didn't depend on context or convenience. It held up under scrutiny, distance, and change. His legacy never peaked in a single moment. It settled gradually, strengthened by repetition and restraint. Each year added confirmation rather than contradiction. What once felt understated became unquestionable. That is the rarest outcome in professional sports. Not a career remembered for flashes, debates, or revisions, but one that stabilizes into permanence. Larry Fitzgerald didn't need time to explain him. Time validated him. And once that judgment was complete, his place in the game became fixed, not as a player defined by what he lacked, but as one elevated by everything that lasted. Larry Fitzgerald's legacy doesn't rely on debate, because time already rendered its verdict. What survived wasn't just production, but relevance across change. His career proved that greatness doesn't need reinvention to remain meaningful. It needs consistency, adaptability, and restraint. The absence of a championship never reduced him, because his value was never dependent on resolution. Time didn't expose his career, it refined it. Now it's your turn. When you look back at NFL history, where does Larry Fitzgerald rank among the greatest receivers the game has ever seen? And has time already answered that question for us? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories where legacy is shaped by endurance rather than noise, subscribe and stay with us. Some careers don't fade, they settle into history.